Noswaith dda. Good evening. Thank you for joining the premiere for our production of A Child's Christmas in Wales, Nadolig Plentyn yng Nghymru, by Dylan Thomas.
Before we begin, we would like to tell you more about the charity we're raising money for, Tŷ Gobaith Children's Hospices.
Hope House provide care for children and young people who suffer from life-limiting conditions across Shropshire, Cheshire, Powys and North Wales.
Mae Tŷ Gobaith hefyd yn darparu cefnogaeth emosiynol ac ymarferol I 750 o deuluoedd sy'n gofalu am blentyn sy'n ddifrifol wael.
1,950 children in this area currently live with a terminal illness. And tragically, 3 of these children die every week.
Due to a loss of 1 million in income due to the impact of coronavirus pandemic, Hope House can only afford to help 1 in every 3 of these children.
Mae'n rhaid I Tŷ Gobaith godi 6.5 miliwn o bunna bob blwyddyn I gadw drysau I hysbytau yng Nghroesoswallt ag yng Nghonwy ar agor.
There's no doubt that the children and families who depend on Hope House need our support now more than ever. No one should ever have to face the death of a child alone, let alone at Christmas.
Please donate generously to our fundraising page so Hope House can continue with their vital work in these most challenging of times.
A Child's Christmas in Wales. One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the sea town corner. Now and out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep. That I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. All the Christmases roll down towards the two-tongued sea like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice-edged fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I can find. Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds the colour of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlours, and we chased with the jawbones of deacons the English and the bears, before the motor car, before the wheel, before the Duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback. It snowed, and it snowed. But here a small boy says, "Oh, it snowed last year too. I made a snowman, my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea." But that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from whitewash buckets down the sky, it came shawling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands of the bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls and settled on the postman opening the gate like a dumb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards.
O
were the postmen then too? With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherry noses on spread frozen feet, they crunched up to the doors and mittened on them manfully. But all the children could hear was a ringing of bells. You mean the postman went rat-a-tat-tat and the doors rang? I mean, the bells the children could hear were inside them. I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells. There were church bells too. Inside them? No. In the bat-black snow-white belfries, tugged by bishops and storks, and they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence. They were useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days, admittance made for giant slots, zebra scarves of substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-war down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanties like patchwork tea-cosies, and bunny-suited busbies and balaclavas for the victims of head-shrinking tribes. And from aunts who always wore wool next to their skin, there were moustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why ants had any skin left at all. And once I had a little crocheted nose bag from an aunt, now alas no longer whinnying with us. And pictureless books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate on Farmer Giles' pond, and did, and drowned. And books that told me everything about the wasp, except why. Go on to the useless presents. Bags of moist and many-coloured jelly babies, and a folded flag and a false nose and a tram conductor's cap and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell. Never a catapult. Once, by mistake that no one could explain, a little hatchet and a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most un-duck-like sound. A mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow. And a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any colour I pleased. And still the dazzling sky-blue sheep are grazing in a red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boileds, toffee, fudge, all sorts, crunches, cracknels, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butter Welsh for the Welsh. And troops of bright tin soldiers who could not fight, could always run, and snakes and families and happy ladders, and easy hobby games for little engineers complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo. And a whistle to make dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door and make him beat on the wall with his stick and shake our picture off the wall. And a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth and you stood at the corner of the street and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette, and then, with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. For dinner we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner the uncles sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, put their large moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Auntie Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Auntie Dulcie had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked a port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard singing like a big bosom thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and the snow descending, I would sit among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble dates to make a model man-o'-war, following the instructions for little engineers, and produce what might be mistaken for a sea-going tramcar. I remember that we went singing carols once, when there wasn't the shaving of a moon to light the flying streets. At the end of a long road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled up the darkness of the drive that night, each one of us afraid, each one holding a stone in his hand in case. And all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as of old, and unpleasant and maybe web-footed men wheezing in caves. We reached in the black bulk of the house.
What shall we give them? Hark the herald?
Oh no, said Jack. Good King Wenceslas, I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. And we began to sing.
Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon at night, though the frost was cruel, when a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel.
Our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness round the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together near the dark door.
Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen.
And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who had not spoken for a long time, joined our singing, a small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door, a small, dry voice through the keyhole. And when we'd stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated under the hot water bottle gulping gas. Everything was good again, and shone over the town.
Perhaps it was a ghost,
Jim said. Perhaps it was trolls, Dan said, who was always reading.
Oh, let's go in and see if there's any jelly left, Jack said.
And we did that. Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle. A cousin sang Cherry Ripe. Another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death. And then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest, and then everybody laughed again, and then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-coloured snow, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill, and hear the music rising from them up the long, steady, falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to the close, unholy darkness. And then I slept.
Ding dong merrily on high.